Imagine the silence of space, an immense, dark, infinite void. And now imagine three men locked in a small spaceship, suspended between life and death, between the Earth and the Moon. It was July 20, 1969. Humanity held its breath. Millions of people in front of the television, radios tuned in from every corner of the planet. Eyes turned toward a goal that seemed impossible. They called it Apollo 11, a number that today signifies history, courage, human ingenuity. But behind that name lay a desperate race against time, against mistakes, against fear. Because no one, until then, had ever dared so much. That day was not just the day man set foot on the moon. It was the day all of humanity understood that dreams, even the wildest, can come true. This is not just the story of a space mission. It is the story of a journey that will forever change our vision of the possible. The secret history of NASA, Apollo 11, and the moon landing. It all began long before 1969. In the 1950s and 1960s, the world was divided in two. On one side, the United States. On the other, the Soviet Union. Two superpowers, two ideologies, two visions of the future. It wasn't just a political or military challenge. It was a race to prove who would lead the destiny of humanity. And space became the new battlefield. The Soviets struck first. In 1957, they launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. And 2 years later, Yuri Gagarin accomplished the feat, the first man in space. The entire world applauded, while the United States trembled. President John F. Kennedy understood that it wasn't enough to just make up ground. He had to set a goal so bold that it would turn defeat into victory. And so, in 1961, he uttered the words that changed history. We decide to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is difficult. It was a promise to the American people, but it was also an impossible challenge. At that time, the United States didn't even have the technology to contemplate such a journey. NASA was given an enormous task to turn a dream into reality in less than 10 years, an undertaking that would require science, sacrifice, courage, and human lives. Making Apollo 11 a reality wasn't just about building a rocket. It meant inventing an entire universe of technologies that had never existed before. The Saturn V rocket, more than 110 meters tall, was designed to propel tons of metal, fuel, and dreams into space. Every part was a risk. Every detail could tread the fine line between triumph and tragedy. The engineers worked tirelessly, day and night. Behind them, thousands of workers, technicians, and scientists, a silent army that no one would ever see on television, but which made the mission possible. The fear wasn't just that of the unknown. It was the knowledge that every failed test could cost human lives. And there were many failures. The memory of Apollo 1 weighed like a millstone. On January 27, 1967, during a ground test, a cabin fire killed 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. NASA understood that the price of error was death. And from that day on, every bolt, every cable, every screw was checked as if the life of the entire world depended on it. The preparation for Apollo 11 wasn't just about engineering. It was an act of faith in human intelligence, because every simulation, every training, every test was a step into the unknown. Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins weren't just men. They were symbols. They were the faces of a humanity about to attempt the impossible. On July 16, 1969, at 9:32 in the morning, Florida shook. A roar pierced the air, and the Saturn V, the most powerful machine ever built by man, rose into the sky.
Millions of people watched live. The eyes of the world were fixed on that rocket that carried with it not only 3 men, but also the hopes of an entire civilization. The journey to the moon was not a straight line. As soon as it reached Earth's orbit, a crucial maneuver occurred. The command module it separated from the rocket's core stage, turned, and docked with the lunar module, called Eagle. Only then was the spacecraft ready to undertake the long journey to its goal. A few minutes later, the Earth remained behind them, transforming into a small blue globe suspended in the darkness. An image no one had ever seen like this before, and one that would forever change the perception of our planet. Fragile, solitary, precious. On board, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins followed millimetric procedures. Every movement was calculated, every breath monitored. Mistakes were not allowed. Michael Collins remained in command of the core module, which would later remain in lunar orbit. Armstrong and Aldrin, however, would have the most dangerous task, descending to the surface in the Eagle. The journey lasted 3 days, 3 days suspended between silence and infinity. 3 days during which the entire world held its breath. And then came the most anticipated moment, the descent to the moon. But nothing went as planned. Once reaching lunar orbit, Armstrong and Aldrin entered the lunar module Eagle. After final checks, the small vehicle separated from the command module, leaving Michael Collins alone in lunar orbit around the moon. From that moment, the 2 astronauts began the most risky phase of the mission, the descent to the surface. The lunar module Eagle began to descend. Armstrong and Aldrin watched the monitors, following the procedures, but soon realized that something was wrong. The instruments were signaling alarms. The computer, overloaded with calculations, began to display errors. For a moment, it seemed that everything might fail. From Earth, in Houston, the voices of the flight controllers grew tense. The world didn't know it, but at that moment, the mission was at risk of disaster. And as if that weren't enough, the planned landing site was full of rocks. If they had landed there, the Eagle would have overturned, and with it, humanity's dream. Then Armstrong took manual control. With glacial calm, he guided the module over the uneven terrain, searching for safety. Every second consumed precious fuel. Every heartbeat brought the shadow of catastrophe closer. At last, less than 30 seconds of autonomy remained. Then a voice. "Houston, Tranquility Base. The Eagle has landed." An eerie silence, followed by an explosion of applause, shouts, tears. The entire world, for the first time, understood that we had made it. It was July 20, 1969. Man had arrived on the moon. A few hours after the landing, the module hatch opened. Neil Armstrong, his heart beating faster than ever before, slowly descended the Eagle ladder. The entire world watched. 650 million people, the largest live television broadcast in history. An entire planet united in a single moment. And then the words that would remain engraved forever. That's one small step for man, a giant leap for mankind. The moon dust rose beneath his boot. In that moment, the dream of generations became reality. Buzz Aldrin joined him shortly after. The 2 astronauts walked across the silent surface, planted the American flag, installed scientific instruments, and collected rock samples. Every gesture was charged with meaning. Every movement was history. And meanwhile, Michael Collins, who remained in orbit, watched from above, alone but aware of being part of something no one would forget. On Earth, people applauded, cried, hugged each other. For one night, the political boundaries and divisions of the world dissolved. Not just 3 men had arrived on the moon. All of humanity had arrived. After 21 hours on the lunar surface, it was time to return. Armstrong and Aldrin ascended in the Eagle module, leaving behind footprints that would last forever. The ascent to the command module was still fraught with uncertainties. A failure, a mistake, and they would be trapped on the moon, destined to die far from Earth. The White House had also prepared a speech in case they never returned. But once again, human determination triumphed over fear. The Eagle lifted off the surface and rejoined the command module. Collins welcomed them, and together the three astronauts embarked on their journey home. On July 24, 1969, the spacecraft splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The heroes were returned to Earth safe and sound. The dream was fulfilled. Apollo 11 wasn't just an American victory, it was a triumph for all humanity. Because that day we proved to ourselves that there are no insurmountable barriers. The moon landing left us much more than flags and rocks. It left us a universal message, humanity's ability to combine ingenuity, courage, and hope to overcome the impossible. Yet not everyone wanted to believe what happened in July 1969. From the moment Apollo 11 returned, rumors, suspicions, and accusations arose. Some said it had all been filmed in a movie studio, that the shadows were not returning, that the flag seemed to move in the wind. Conspiracy theories grew, fueled by mistrust and the desire to believe that such an undertaking was too big to be true. But the reality is different. The evidence is overwhelming, and it doesn't just come from NASA. The moon rocks brought to Earth were analyzed by scientists around the world in independent laboratories. No one doubted their extraterrestrial origin. On the surface of the moon, astronauts left instruments that still function today. Retroreflectors that reflect laser beams sent from Earth, and which for over 50 years have allowed us to precisely measure the distance between us and our satellite. And more recently, probes sent into lunar orbit have photographed the landing sites, the tracks left by the rovers, the remains of the modules, even the footprints of the Apollo missions. The truth is that humanity really did arrive on the moon. The fact that some still deny it today does not diminish the magnitude of the undertaking. On the contrary, it makes it even more extraordinary, because no lie stands the test of time. Only the truth continues to shine, like the light of the moon. Today, more than 50 years later, we still look at that small footprint on the moon and understand that it's not just Armstrong's mark. It's a sign of what humanity can achieve when it dreams big. Apollo 11 proves that limits aren't walls, but horizons to be overcome. If this story moved you, join me on this journey. Subscribe to the channel, because the next step, just like back then, can start right here.